Hello, I'm Eagle Gardens 1 on Instagram, and this is fucking talking shit with Eagle episode 714. Holy cow. We have Beavah's Budz in the house. Mark Gillis, how you doing? Hopefully I said that right. You want to tell us how you're doing and where they can find you, my friend?
Yes, I'm doing good. Just hanging out on the East Coast right now, glad I'm awake right now and on the show. And you can find me on Instagram under Beaver Buds and Beaver Buds Backup as well.
Right on, right on. What are you smoking on this evening?
So right now, this is a little bit hella jelly from a solar company here in Massachusetts. It's not too bad. Nice little hybrid.
So I guess we should start this off right from the beginning, right where we usually do. When was the first time you seen or used cannabis, my friend? When did it come into your life? When did the journey start?
So 13 years old, I was on the summer basketball league at St. Agatha's Church. And I'll never forget Peter Clancy and Mike something. I forgot his last name. But after basketball practice, they were a little bit older and they're like, "Hey, Gillis, going for a walk in the woods by our house. Smoke a joint, you in?" And I was like, yeah, I smoke weed all the time. I'm totally in, guys, because there was older kids on the team and stuff. And I'll never forget, they had this giant joint and I smoked it with them. No idea what I was doing at all. So they showed me how to smoke it. And I'll never forget, I was giddy as shit, went home, had a big dinner, laughed the whole time. My mom, dad, grandma, who we were living with at the time, had no idea what was going on. And I just remember being in the shower, scrubbing my hands and going, "Man, I can't get the smell off of it. This is some good shit." And that was the first time I'd ever smoked weed. And yeah, it's been happening since.
That's awesome. So just I guess toy along with me here because I have a theory going, a running theory. So you obviously you would say I guess got high the first time, right? You would say something, would you agree?
100%.
So my theory is I want to tell you, were you around cannabis prior? Did say relatives or older, brother, older sister,
No,
maybe
no,
smoke around you before?
not at all. So I'm actually like the black sheep of the family when it comes to that. So I've pretty much been the only person in the family my entire life who smokes cannabis and has. Now that it's legal back here in New England, in a lot of the states, most of my family has jumped on board, which is awesome. But yeah, didn't grow up around it. No one smoked, no one grew it around me. Just got introduced when I was in high school.
You're the first one. You just shot a hole in my theory. First one to shoot a hole through my theory. Cheers to you.
Sorry to burst your bubble.
Well, this is when and so far, you seem to be, and again, I don't mean this in a bad way, the oddball to the theory so far. But the theory is that I'm starting, up until now, I'm starting to think that the CB1, CB2 receptors in our brain have some type of almost like barrier or almost like cherry, if you will. You know
Yep.
what I mean? That has to be wore down before you can actually, feel the buzz. Because a lot of people that are on the side that they don't get high weren't around cannabis early on. So I think their barrier was still intact versus, the people that did get high were kind of, it
I
was
gotcha.
secondhand smoke wore it down or something as they were growing up. But you seem to be the exception to the rule.
I figure I've always been meant to be in cannabis. It took a very long time, especially because of the stigma behind it, not being legal for so long, in different states and everything. But ever since I was young, I've always believed, in cannabis, especially, really in college. when I was one of the only kids I knew smoking, my freshman year. And I've probably popped at least like 100 cherries, in the sense of, smoking weed for the first time. Yeah. I remember friends coming up being like, hey, you smoke really good shit. You know what you're doing. You mind if me and my friend get high with you for the first time? It's like, yeah, come on over. Let's do it. We'll have a fun experience. So it's always been a big part of my life, especially those later teen years, into young adult years, and now into my older adult years. But I've also been big on it, telling people for the last couple decades, all the medical sides of it, and everything I was using it for prior to really becoming medically accepted here in Massachusetts. And then, on to recreational here as well. I remember in college, having hangovers, having the shits, smoking a joint, smoking a blunt, and within an hour feeling better, and just little things like that. So I've always known there was a lot more to this plant than just smoking a joint or bowl and getting high and having a good time.
Right on, right on. So would you say that, I mean, did you know the medical impact or the medical side of it then, or was it just kind of recreation? You just kind of went with it because it would feel good?
So I would say a little bit of both. When I was younger, definitely, on the social aspect of it, it was fun rolling a big fat one, passing around like 20, 30 people, having a good time and stuff like that. But I always saw the other side of it as well. I knew there was something behind this plant that did good, because I used to get high all the time. I got straight A's in college. Like, it helped me write some of the best papers that I've ever written before, far as like focus goes. And in that regards, as I got older, I figured out what sativa was, what indigo was, what hybrid was, and even in my day-to-day life now, when I'm stuck on something or I need to focus when I'm doing a project, I have a little bit of sativa. I zone right in, so I've been able to find those places to go with different strains to make my life functional, and help me. And also too, I'm a big believer in the medical side of it, especially, so I have chronic lymphocytic leukemia. And for the last 4 years, my numbers have steadily gone up every 6 months when I go in for my checkups. But this year specifically, my numbers have been coming down without treatment. And the only thing I can factor is I'm in a couple things. I'm in a better job, so a lot less stress, better headspace at home because of that as well. Things are taking off for Beavah buds, good job, like I was saying. But also too, I've increased my CBD and my THC intake daily. And I'm a big believer that that's helped reduce my white blood cell count and bring it down to more better numbers, meaning it's, kind of like in remission without treatment. Tough thing with that is we don't have the science behind it, right now in regards to what's available to me. I've offered to be tested through my cancer institute, and they're like, yeah, there's no money to test you for stuff like that. So yeah, it's always just been a big part. And it's always been right in my life. And it's so great that right now at this time in my life, things are finally clicking in that regards and moving to where I want to be within the cannabis industry and everything. And hopefully, as things are going along and stuff, my journey, I can bring this, out to the masses. And, even if I help one person, I made a difference, which would be awesome.
That something that you said there really hit home, and it has for a very long time since I've seen recreational be kind of pushed in a few states. As I'm in a state where medical came first, and then recreational came much later. And when recreational came through, we seen the numbers of medical cards just completely cut in half.
Mm-hmm.
and it was really disheartening. And then because I still carry a card after all these years. You know, I feel it's very important because it is a medicine. You know, and I've always treated it as a medicine. You know, it does has probably its recreational sides to it, but it more often it's a medicine. It saved a lot of lives. But when the numbers of cards get reduced, you know, the powers that be with the funding are watching that. You know what I mean? And they're like,
Yep.
yeah, no. Just like you're saying, there's no money in for testing like that because nobody's pulling cards. Nobody's proclaiming that cannabis is doing that. So that it kind of hinders, you know, the research, at least in our country, I feel.
Oh, 100%, and I think deep down my oncologist knows there is truth behind it because she has no explanation. And I'm fortunate enough where I go, the Dana-Farber Institute, she's the head of oncology, so it doesn't get any better than that. And if it's stumping her, then, there's got to be something more to it. Or I'm just one hell of a lucky son of a gun,
Well, let's hope it's a little bit of both, my friend. I'm hoping
Yeah,
it's a little bit of both.
I agree. I agree. Um, but yeah, and also too, like, and one big side effect with this type of leukemia is zero appetite. So the nice thing is, it actually gives me an appetite, so I eat. Because otherwise, excuse me, I'd go all day not feeling hungry at all and not really noticing that I wasn't eating. And that's the one thing is, the loss of weight. I can't afford to get any skinnier than I am, so that's helped out just in a huge regard. And also the mental side of it. I was diagnosed 10 days after my son was born, after my wife had a emergency C-section and things went a little array for a few moments during that procedure. So it was a lot to take in everything at once. I had to be a dad right away, take care of my wife for a few months too, to be in bedridden, and then explain to my family and friends, like, hey, guess what? I have cancer, but I have the best kind of leukemia. So something else will probably kill me, is what they told me. So don't worry about it. So it on that side, and it helped a lot with the mental side of it as well, just accepting that, learning to come to ease, easing my anxieties, also on top of talking about it openly with my family and having a good support system. There's a culmination of factors that all play into that, for me.
Well, that's awesome. You got a good support system. That's super key through that. And are you using it? Are you just strictly smoking cannabis? Are you taking full spectrum oil? I mean, what's your approach with this?
So what I do every day is, I do a gram of 1,000 milligram CBD every single day. I put it into my morning shakes and I consume that during the day. And then, starting, mid-afternoon towards the end of work, just because of the nature of my job, where I'm a facilities manager and I got to be on my A game, I'll start having a little bit more CBD and stuff. And then as soon as I get home, usually flower or edibles. I do tinctures once in a while. And one thing I'm starting to learn how to do is make RSO. So part of my outdoor harvest this year will be dedicated solely to making RSO for myself. And hopefully doing a regimen of that and sticking to that will also assist me and hopefully bring those numbers down as well.
So I guess when did the cultivation side come into hand and the medical way, when did you have that aha moment that there was medical benefit? Was it when you actually the leukemia? It sounded like earlier on in college you kind of realized.
Yeah, so I would say probably right around 18, 19, when I really started to smoke and enjoy and figure out what it was good for and everything. that's when I realized that there was the medical benefits to it and a lot more to this plan. And then as time went on, hanging out with different individuals, trying different strains, going to different places where they were doing illegal grows and things like that early on, 20 plus years ago. That's when I really started to learn more about this. And then, I had to take a break for a while, not in the sense of, from smoking. I've always smoked. And, I openly admit this nowadays. I didn't so much when I had this job, but I'd gone into law enforcement for almost a decade. And I did, I was still one of those ones, I had to do my job during the day, but as soon as I was off duty, I was smoking, you know, just because that was always going to be part of my life. And there wasn't anything that, would stop that. But during that 10 years, I didn't focus on it as much, far as like speaking to people, going to places, just being more involved. Then, then once that changed, went through a little bit of life. And when I came back to Massachusetts after a couple of years out in New York with my wife, that's when I really started exploring more. I was like, I want to do something with cannabis and I don't know what. And we're getting ready just to go vote for medical. So this was about 10 years ago now. So I was excited. So we got medical in, and I remember being one of the, first patients in that first month going and getting my medical card, letting them know about, my anxiety, depression issues, some things I'd been through, and some surgeries I had. So I was prescribed that medically. And then, every year's been renewed, and now it's, renewed for the cancer aspect of it, in that regards. But when I got that first medical license, because there was no dispensaries and there was far and few caregivers in the state, you had to grow. So that's when I started to learn how to grow, was just about a decade ago now. So started outdoors, had a couple plants of OG Kush, I'll never forget, had no clue what the fuck I was doing, put them in the ground and hoped for the best. And I think my first harvest, I think I yielded about 4 or 5 ounces out of 3 plants. It was absolutely terrible, but I was wicked proud of myself. I was like, oh, sweet, I grew weed for the first time. And every year since has just gotten better. And I've improved and I've learned more and I've spoken to more people and been part of more discussions with cultivators and read a lot more and trial and error, just trying different things to the plant and everything. Excuse me. Which brings me up to the last 2 years, due to COVID and working from home, it gave me a real chance where I have always wanted to make that impact in the cannabis industry. And I've always wanted to have at least one strain that helps someone. And it's like that guy, his shit was awesome. That strain was amazing. It did what it was meant to do. And I would love that, to have that one claim to fame, in this industry. That would be my imprint on cannabis. So that's where really over the last 2 years, one day I woke up and I was like, I'm going to breed. I don't know how the hell I'm going to do this. So I read about it, watched some YouTube videos, spoke to a few people, and I started breeding. And that's where it led me 2 years later, where I was able to develop the Beavah Budz genetic line, that I've been running for the last 2 years. And this year I was fortunate enough to have quite a few people run it indoors for me, here and there in the US, and a couple other places. Got great feedback, and I'm running it for the first time outdoors right now, which I'm excited about because everyone's run indoors, and outdoors it's doing absolutely amazing. And out of the 7 strains I've created that no one's ever created before, I truly believe 3 of them are my breadwinners. I don't know what it is. I get super excited about them. My gut tells me, it's like, Mark, these are them. These are the ones you're going to focus on. And everyone that I've had over to the house as well, when they've been seeing these plants develop and just, how they're forming and the smell. Cause I went a little bit more rudimentary on this grow where I let them just do more of a natural thing outdoors just to see what happens. So very little LST and very little topping I did. I just let them go wild. Everyone's like, dude, these are amazing. There's something special here. So, and I think I found that. And I'm hoping, after this harvest, I'm coming up to do a few different cannabis shows in Massachusetts, and give out my samples and everything. And, hopefully, fingers crossed, get some good feedback. But my goal is if these are the ones, continue to further develop those. But also, I've been talking to the right people in my industry to hopefully bring me to that legal market. So, this year, big things are going on and it's moving in the direction where I want it to be in. So I'm very excited and I love it. I'm also wicked busy between, my normal job and trying to do this. And I'm very fortunate. My wife is 100% understandable and in 12 years has never seen me so excited. So fully supports it and loves that I'm doing, what I want to do. And just, she's amazed, like doing things that she could never think of or out of the box. Like, she's like, that's wild. You're just doing a podcast or going to shows by yourself, networking with, dozens of people at a time, trying to make things happen all the time. And I know I'm one of those people. It's not about money. It's not about fame. I just want to be part of this industry because this is my home and where I'm meant to be. And hopefully people are like, dude, you grow some killer shit. Really appreciate your contribution.
That's awesome, brother. I'm fucking stoked for you. I mean, really. I think that passion in itself is a good portion of your medicine. You know what I mean? There's just something super strong about something kind of tugging you on, that passion.
Oh, 100%. Like today, I was at work at 4:30 today because we had an air handle unit go down, supplying one of the grow rooms. So was on work, did that, put in an 11-hour day today. But then I came home and, I was out in the garden defoling for like 3 hours today. And that's the way it is. And, and that's where I knew that I love to do this because at the end of the day, it could just be a hobby. It could just be a thing I do occasionally, but I want to do it. And I love doing it. Like coming home and defoling, it sucks. No one wants to do it. But I was happy as a clam, listening to a little music, rolled one up, and it's like, yeah, this is where I want to be. I was pushing papers the last 10 years before that. And then 10 years before that, I was in law enforcement. So I've done things in my life to get by and provide. And it's nice I'm finally doing something that I like to do, and it's providing for me right now, which in benefit provides for my family. So it works out in a full circle.
Super excited for it. Just before I lose this one, because sometimes I think questions and try to put them in the back of my head. It's kind of like non-grow, so I want to get it out there. So, law enforcement, that's the angle of the question there. So, how did you, when you were in law enforcement, what were your thoughts on cannabis? And then the second part of that is, were there some regrets when it became your medicine? The wrestler, your approach, prior.
So when my philosophy was when I was on duty, so for just about 10 years, I never arrested anyone for pot. I usually just confiscated it, smashed their bowl in front of them and took their weed and was like, I'm going to turn this in, and brought it home and smoked it, to be 100% transparent with you. So in that regards, I was very lenient, back then, because I didn't give a shit. And I also didn't want to jam anyone up over a joint or a dime bag. It wasn't worth it. I think the most I ever confiscated was maybe a half an ounce. So it wasn't like I was going around getting pounds of weed or anything in that nature. Um, so yeah, it never bothered me. And overall, I've never had any regrets. I left law enforcement because I was a knucklehead. Thought I was on top of the world, got into some trouble. So that's why I was no longer a police officer anymore. Um, so since I've been smoking weed, yeah, I've never had regrets with smoking pot or, the medical side of it at all.
Oh, no, 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 not the regrets in that aspect, but the regrets with enforcing the law, which you kind of already.
I'm sorry. Oh, my apology. I misunderstood. I went way off on that one. But yeah, no. When I was on duty, like I have regrets from when I was a police officer. So long story short, when I was younger, I got onto law enforcement when I was 18. I was fortunate enough to go through the co-op program at my college, at an all-girls college. So, I had a pretty, juicy first police gig. And, it went well. And they ended up sending me through the police academy to become a full-time police officer. So by the time I hit 19, I was a full-time police officer. So at that time, like, it was interesting in my life because I would party on the weekends, but then during the rest of the time, I was a police officer enforcing laws that I was breaking at the same time. So it was very interesting how that started in law enforcement. So I didn't start off in the best way, I guess you could say, because I'm arresting kids for underage drinking, but then the following day I'm underage drinking at my own college. So it was a little bit of a double-sided sword, in that regards. And then as my law enforcement career progressed, I had some good opportunities, but I went down the wrong path just because I thought I was doing the cool thing at the time because I was young and naive. So I had picked up some bad habits. So those are the regrets that I have in law enforcement. Otherwise, I think if I had had more positive things and made better choices and maybe entered at a later age, things would have been different. But I also look at my life where it is today. I never would have met my wife. I wouldn't have my son. I wouldn't be where I am. So for me, yeah, I could say there was regrets from things I did back then, but at the end of the day, there's zero regrets because where I am is exactly where I want to be in life. There's nowhere else I would rather be than exactly, maybe a beach other than sitting on my couch, but this is where I want to be. Um, so yeah, just overall, I guess we could all say we regret shit from the past, but it all got me. It took a little bit, but it got me to where I needed to be.
I can very much respect that answer. Very much respect that answer.
Oh,
So,
you're welcome.
how did cannabis, once you started cultivating it, kind of change things for you?
That's when I started getting super excited about doing this, especially my outdoor grows, because no one was doing outdoors, and like I had a caretaker, we started getting medical dispensaries in, well before rec ever went in. And the medical dispensaries, they had some good weed, but as in any business, they had a rocky start here in Mass, some bad grows, some bad experiences. Um, and as I was getting better with the outdoor growing and sharing it with people, and people are like, "You grew this outdoors?" And it's like, "Yeah, why?" And they're like, "This is really good. Like, are you sure you grew it outdoors?" It's like, "Yeah, no, I grew it outdoors. I spent fucking 6 months doing it. Like, I knew I grew it outdoors." Um, that's when I really started to get excited because I was like, wow, if people that I don't know that I'm meeting for the first time are telling me that I'm growing something really well, Mark, you're on to something. Like, and also too, my entire life, because of my old man, I've always grown vegetables, fruits, flowers, so I've always had a, excuse me, I've always had a green thumb my entire life, and just done well at it. So I think partly, with that and the love for this, and really doing research, finding out what works, what doesn't work, different methods for outside, speaking to different individuals, especially a lot more of the senior growers who have decades and decades of experience. That's where, when I really started first growing and going to shows was looking for. I looked for all the old timers because I knew they would know the tricks and the tips that no one else knew. No matter what I could read in a book or watch on a YouTube video. So I learned some interesting things, from some very old timers that had been growing for 40, 50 years behind the scenes, which was really cool. But getting back to growing well, that's when I really started to hone in on it. Was probably around year 3 or year 4 that I was growing outdoors, is when I really started to get a grip on my skills and improve and make the grow the best I could. And over the last 10 years doing this now, I've only done living soils with my own compost that I make at the house. I'm a little more rudimentary when it comes to that, but at the same time, I like that way because it's almost like going back to our original roots when they were growing original land races. They just grew in rich, fertile soil in the conditions that they had. They didn't have any fancy gadgets or gizmos, or enhancers, or any thing like that. So that's a big aspect what I've enjoyed outdoors and learning that art, because once you get a good soil, it's simple. You don't need anything else to grow good bud outside. It may not be the highest THC, it may not be the lowest, but I can tell you it's great bud. I'm excited to smoke it. This will be the first time outdoors, running my genetic line. So I'm excited to see what it's like on the outdoor version. The nose on them is out of this fucking world. I don't mean to brag on myself. I wish you could smell them right now. Like there's something, it's making a dance in my nose. Like there's some sense I just can't make sense of. And it's some of the most aromatic that I've yet to have in all my years of growing. And it's amazing that I can do that outdoors. You know, it's a non-controlled environment in New England where we could have a blizzard one day, 90 degrees the next day. So that's really when I knew that year, like 3, 4, like I was saying, when I knew I was on to something good with my grows and mastering the outdoors. And every year since, every grow gets a little bit better. I learn something new. I make a mistake and I correct it and I don't repeat it. And I'm a big believer the best growers are the ones that admit they make mistakes. I chopped down a plant yesterday because I let it slack a little bit and a PM outbreak happened. Kind of missed it, which was my fault. And it happens to the best of us, I had to take my loss with that one plant because, I could have tried to correct it, but the way it spread all over it, I was like, yeah, it's not correcting it. Take it down now before it hits the rest of the crop. And lucky it hasn't hit everything else. Just a bummer because we're a few weeks shy of, harvest, so it's like, oh, that was a lot of work put in. But, it happens. And, I accept that there will be mistakes. I will lose some here or there, but that just makes me that much better and appreciate it that much more. There's no such thing as a perfect grower. I don't care what anyone says. I might be new in that regards to growing and breeding, but there's no one that's perfect in it. We can all get better and we can have great grows. But yeah, we make some mistakes. There's a few fuck ups here and there. Mother Nature can throw a curveball at you.
It sure the hell can. That's for sure. Another thing I think is pretty awesome is, you had the feeling. You know what I mean? These are the ones. Again, man, I'm a person that's huge on like manifestation and shit like that. Vibration thing, things putting off vibration. So then plants, calling out to you, saying, well, not just the vibration, but I honestly believe cannabis is a plant spirit medicine. You read into that, you kind of walk through the forest and, the plant or herb that, is the medicine for you kind of calls out, you'll make a deal with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think cannabis is that very same thing. When you put your nose to the jar, whatever, you're individually, yes, 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 no, yes, you're the
Yep,
one.
100%.
You know what I
I
mean?
fully agree with that.
So with it calling out to you like that, especially when you're looking for it to be a medicine, medicine recreational, that's a whole different subject. How can one be the same?
Yeah.
But I think there's value in that. You know what I mean? I think that's pretty awesome. I think you're following not just your nose, but your gut, your heart, and everything else there.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I've had to do most of my life. And it's a weird feeling, because when you know. It was just like the first time I met my wife, I knew she was the one. My best friends were like, "You're fucking nuts, dude. You went on one date." But I knew right then and there. I was like, "That's the woman I'm gonna marry," and it's 12 years later. And it's a very similar feeling. Hers was a little bit different, but very similar gut feeling where it's just like, yeah, these are the three. Like the others, you're not bad. I'll give you some loving, but you are the three that I'm gonna carry to the next level. You're the three that I'm gonna be able to bring out, and the masses will hopefully enjoy them as much as I'm going to enjoy them and have been growing. So, and it's exciting as well watching them develop and how beautiful they are, and then seeing how stable they are, especially in an outdoor environment, here in New England, and for someone, I'm not taught in breeding or anything. I did reading, I talked to people, but then I just experimented, and just started figuring it out. I'm just very, very fortunate, that things are working out for me in that regards. And, I'm 40 years old and it took me a while to get here, but I finally found, what my purpose is, what I want to do, outside of my family, this is it. It's like, Mark, you found your calling. I went through a lot of bullshit, bullshit jobs, some bullshit things in life, but it got me to right where I want to be. And when I've been able to share this with my family and they see me, and how happy I am and excited I get, it's awesome, and everyone's like, wow, I want that. It's like, yeah, I finally found what I've been striving for, and a lot of it clicked recently too. The last few months I've been microdosing, because I've always known there was something more that was missing that I needed to, click and get over. And, I did have another aha moment one day where I was like, yeah, Mark, yeah, this is it. This is where I want to be. This is, the industry where I want to leave my legacy. This is where I want to die, in a metaphorical sense. Like, this is what I want to go out. And I told my wife, when I go out, I expect everyone to smoke the last of my stash. That's what I want, that's how I want to be remembered, where it's like, what? He had some truth behind everything he preached for so long. It just took people a while to jump on board. Classic example is my mother, sweet Italian Irish woman, 69 years old. And she always frowned upon me smoking weed and never really got it. But when I started to explain the medical side over the years and how CBD worked as well, because at the time I had a CBD company here in Mass, she started to get it, and then as it's become more legalized over here, and the more she has learned and everything I've taught her, I now have my mom helping water my plants. She was over the house the other day and she goes, those are the biggest plants you've ever grown. How are you going to fit those in the house? You know, and it's funny to hear my 5 foot nothing mom, you know, compliment like, wow, my son's crushing it. Like, I don't fully get it, but he's doing something special, you know, back here. Um, yeah, I get super excited, you know. Yeah, I could go on and on how excited, you know, I get about growing and stuff. Um, but yeah, it's what I want to do, and I want to continue to do it. You know, my ultimate goal is, you know, hopefully have my own place someday, do my small grows, you know, of just boutique style. That's very craft cannabis, mom and pop style, and then teach, you know, how to grow, you know, and keep it simple. You know, and that's what I'd like to do because also too, you know, I've helped a few friends with their grows and get started. And what's happened with a couple of them is they've started getting better and they've helped other friends that wanted to grow. And it's been a trickle effect, you know, so that makes me really happy when I get together with some of my buddies and I hear like, hey man, I helped two guys from work set up their grows and their grows are doing really nice. And it's because you helped me set up my first grow and walked me through the whole process and was there the whole step of the way. You know, so it's nice to hear. And where they're doing successful things, it lets me know I don't suck at this, you know, because otherwise I'd feel terrible giving out bad. It's like, yeah, I grew this one plant, it grew one bud, thanks to your buddy Mark. It was larvae, it sucked.
You notice I didn't even attempt to stop you when you're like, I could go on and on. I would let you. For all serious, you could give me the whole gauntlet of reasons. I'd be like, yeah, it wouldn't bother me at all. You know, because it's infectious. And then again, I think that's some of the driving force in it, some of the powerful medicine. And one of the other things, yeah, you said you wanted to leave your mark in cannabis and all that, as a lot of us very much do. But the thing I appreciate about the breeding aspect of it, especially when you're taking it seriously as a medicine, is very much the cultivation side of things. I believe, you know, you may 100% put out a medicine that has a great impact, but when you hand them the seeds and the power to produce their own medicine and get up and, you know what I mean, that pull that we were talking
Yep.
about earlier, now we're talking serious medicine. You know what I mean?
Exactly. You know, and that's one of the best. You know, I mean, I love dispensaries. You know, I work for, you know, a cultivation center. So, you know, I fully understand that side. But to give the people the power to do this on their own is even that much better. And I agree because not only getting the benefits from the plant itself, you know, but also the whole aspect, you know, getting up every day, going out, watering your plant, maintaining your plant, inspecting it, you know, making sure you're not getting bugs, you know, or any, you know, other issues, or there's deficiencies. You know, and I find it, anyone could garden, anyone could have flower beds. You know, all they need is a little bit of water. You know, yeah, maybe you weed it out a little bit, you know, you dehead a little bit, you know, when you have some dead parts and stuff. But it's very low maintenance, you know. That's one thing I appreciate. We have beautiful flower beds all over the property, but it's low maintenance for me. I don't really have to do jack to it. But, you know, with the plant, every single day, I have to spend time with the plant. You know, I'm out there. You know, so that's a great aspect because even on a bad day or a stressful day, it's nice being able to go out in the garden for an hour and just defol, you know, inspect it, do my watering and stuff. So, you know, it's a great reliever for me, especially if it's been a long and tedious day, you know, on at my normal job. So yeah, I agree 100% in that full spectrum, you know, giving everyone the power of that, you know, and helping them with that, you know, and hopefully during that process, they get excited about it because, you know, watching it grow from when it's little through the vegetative stage, it's cool and everything. But I feel the real beauty is once you see those first few pistils pop out, And then a week later, a few more pop out. Then a little bit later, you start seeing a little fuzz and a little ball, and you can tell the buds forming. And then next thing you know, it's like, whoa, I got some nice sized buds on there, And then also, too, as it gets towards the end, depending on the strain, having some of those colors come out, your reds, your purples, your yellows. Um, I don't think a lot of people realize how beautiful the plant is on its own as it's growing and going through the stages. And being able to witness that every day, I think is amazing because it's like, wow, it takes a while, but wow, it was worth the benefit. This was awesome. And now look at what I did. It's just like the first time you grow a tomato. It's like, holy shit, I grew this. Now I'm going to eat it.
Yeah, it's very satisfying all the way around. And I think, I've said this a lot too, once you get down and start taking it serious and digging into the soil aspect or the organic part of it, then you're really, healing your soul as well with the soil because you learn a lot about, your place in the universe, how everything actually is working and actually connected, the microbes in your gut, the microbes in your soil all kind of being one. You know what I mean?
Oh,
It's a
100%. And with the living soil aspect, I think that's one of the best influences ever on the plant. They're always happy. They have some of the best smells and structures. And, the fact that it's outdoors and it gets very dense and heavy buds is awesome because a lot of outdoors is larvae and it has that wavy feeling to it, the airy lightness. But it's amazing what I'm doing with that. And also, too, I have homemade compost that where I live, my wife and I bought this house 10 years ago, shortly after my father passed away. And they owned it for 7 years before us. So the compost I've been using has been a combination over almost 17 years. Um, oh, can you hold on for 1 second? My son's up and
100%.
crying.
No
I'll be right
worries.
back.
Family first, brother. Heck yeah, how you guys doing in chat? Cheers, everybody. Brent Dog Pilots, Hillbilly Herd, Seymour Cuts, Cass, Mr. John, much respect. Muscle Artist 2012, much love to you, Ryan Kowalski. Who else we have here in the chat? Hillbilly Herd, Toasties Burned. One cheers to you. Who else we got? 42420, Seymour Cuts, much respect to you as well. Brent Anderson, if I skipped you, I see me. What do you got smoking on? Sam S. Anyone in chat? Cheers to you. Welcome to the show. Hopefully you're enjoying. Patricia, I seen you earlier. Past guest. Cheers to you. Druzilla. How you doing as well? Preset Native 2. Cheers to you. I need to get you in the shout outs. You've been hanging in chat. Long overdue. El Producto. Cheers to you. Hopefully you're well. Welcome to the show. Hopefully you're enjoying it as well. Can of maintain. Cheers. Cheers to all you weed nerds. How are you guys doing? Hopefully you guys have had a wonderful, Tuesday, I believe it was. What are you smoking on? Damn time. Yeah, says crazy people doing stuff. How you doing? You got that dad song, she says. I do, but there's no music during spotlights. Can't risk copyright problems on these great people's episodes, or at least I don't want to. What am I smoking on? I am smoking on a little bit of the hash that I was showing you guys the other night, and some of the Smiley's Gardens Formula 51 that make a dangerous combination two with each other. Very much do so enjoy the Formula 51. I don't know if he's releasing that one or not, but I'm sure. I see a lot of hellos, all that good stuff, but I do not see what are you guys smoking. I missed the spotlights. Hopefully you guys are enjoying the spotlights. I do need to get back to scheduling. Cheers. Should be able to hear Can you hear me? I can't hear you. You probably disconnected from your phone when you walked away from it with your headphones. No, I can't hear you. Reconnect the Bluetooth. Give them a second to pair up there. Nothing. No. Put it back in here. Put it back in. Take it back up. Hopefully they reconnect for it. Hopefully they'll reconnect for you. Can you hear me now? Nothing yet. Better check to make sure it's not on my end. You want to log out, come back in? She said, oh shit, he froze. Leave and come back. You can't hear me either. I can hear you. I can't hear you. Let's see if I can hear you through chat. He's gonna log out and come back. Hope that should fix the issue. Should be able to hear me now.
Yes, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Perfect. Hey, thank you. Sorry about that. So my son, I feel terrible for him. I used to get this as a kid. He gets night terrors now and then. And, we'll start walking around the house and not really know where he is at all. And my wife probably put in earbuds to tune me out so she doesn't hear me from down the hall, on this tonight. So I appreciate you understanding on that. Oh, lost the volume. Oh, yeah, lost the sound again.
That was me. That was me this
Oh,
time.
all right.
Yeah, sometimes when you travel away from your phone, it loses that Bluetooth connection and you gotta reconnect. No worries. I completely 100% understand. So let's get back with it. My next questions, I kind of guess I had, or as we go on. See, I don't write any questions down. I do this just straight back and forth as it should naturally should be.
Exactly.
So we're gonna get to your strengths, your work, but I want to back up because again, we're talking about this as medicine.
Yep.
At least partly. It's your journey, but medicine is and cannabis as medicine as well. So what strains did you find initially that worked for you? In case there's somebody, you know what I mean? I'm sure your strains will help as well, but as many as possible, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Throw out there.
So that's a great question. So I'm a little bit of a weed snob as well. So every year I've been fortunate. I've probably sampled at least 100 plus strains a year for almost the last decade now. that I've had my medical license. Um, and, going to events and stuff and getting open to other growers, specifically around New England. But some of my all-time favorites, and there's some of the classics like Sour Diesel has always done right for me. Blue Dream has always done good for me. OG Kush has definitely, for me personally, always helped ease some of my anxiety. That's one of my favorite ones to grow that I've probably grown more often than any other strain that I've done over the years. That's always a repeat favorite. You know, Blue Dream definitely has helped, calm and relax me, especially on those stressful days. That's another one that I've always just kind of been as a go-to. Um, as I've tried a lot of different strains over the years, there's some that, they're just cool to smoke. I keep a journal and I write a little note about each one, especially if it's a really good one. So someday if I can get that genetics or if I come around it again, it's like, Mark, definitely buy that one. Um, so in that regards, so those are some like the good ones that are always go to that I truly enjoy. But like another favorite is Strawberry Cough. That's a very good one for me. I would say almost any strain I've smoked has always helped me, with nausea and the shits. You know, it is, doesn't matter if it's a sativa, a hybrid, or an indica, good or bad, it's always worked for me. Um, One of my favorite strains all time, and is anything crossed with cheese. For me, that has been absolutely like liquid Viagra. I don't know what it is about a cheese strain, but it gets me revved up. It's similar like when I drink a pint of Guinness, the Irish Viagra. Yeah, it's something with cheese strain. So, if anyone's out there listening, and maybe try a cheese strain if you need some help in that area, or want to feel a little bit extra good. So there's quite a few that I've identified over the years that have really assisted me, that are definitely go-tos. But then there's a lot where it's like, all right, this was good for that, this was good for this, or this is like, wow, that was absolutely amazing. Like this is definitely a go-to. But I would say more often than not, there, especially nowadays in mass, I feel there's just so much mass production out there, and it's not about quality anymore, it's about quantity, that there's just a lot of trash, even in the medical market. And I think the big reason behind that is because of the big push on recreational. I'm not quite sure if medical numbers are down in Massachusetts or not, but I know rec is booming now. And I feel more and more people, here in Mass are less apt to get their medical license, and partly because every year, you pay $50 to the state to renew your ID. But luckily, they've extended it to now every 3 years. So they've eased that burden a little bit. So it's $50 for 3 years. But also, too, it used to be $200 every time to renew it with one of the medical professionals here in Mass. So, a lot of people, especially people that really needed it, that are on fixed incomes or, and have other, financial issues, it was a burden, to spend $250 to get a medical license to get your medicine. When you think about all the other medicines that are prescribed, especially opiates, you don't need a license to get that, like you just need a prescription from your doctor. You don't pay a separate ID every year to show the pharmacy for that. So that's been a struggle in Massachusetts. And, so over the years, they have kind of lessened those fees to make it a little bit easier for individuals to afford it. But then recreational happened, and a lot of people just went to that instead of getting their license. And I look at it this way, after your first 2 or 3 times at a recreational facility here in Mass, just based on the taxes alone, depending on what your average purchase is, let's say your average purchase is $150 every time you go. pretty much by like the third time you go to the dispensary, your taxes almost equivalent to what it would have cost for a medical license, for the fees in Massachusetts. So, and also too, with the medical program here, you get discounted products, all of your flour, your concentrates, your topicals, your edibles, they're at a lower price point and they don't have the restrictions. So you can get higher dosage. So you can get more benefits of medicine than you could at the recreational. Like here in Mass, recreational edibles are at zero point 0.5 milligrams, zero point 0.5 milligrams, very low dose or 5 milligrams, I'm sorry, very low dose. But where on the medical side, you could get one gummy that's 100 milligrams, so you could get a lot more benefit out of it. So there's a lot more benefits to the medical side. And I don't think people realize that, because of this push for the recreational side. Because now in Massachusetts, wherever you go, especially on our highways, almost every other billboard is for a recreational place in Mass. In a way, it's awesome to see recreational because I never thought you would ever see it legal in this state, or in my lifetime. So in a way, it is exciting and it's awesome that people do have access to it and easier access. But at the same time, it's taken away, I feel dramatically, not knowing what the numbers are, right now, if they've gone down or up, but taking away from the medical side of it, a lot in that aspect. Because I know when I go and I do the medical side of it, when I do utilize a dispensary, I'm in and out. There's never a line. But when I see the recreational side, there could be 10, 20 people in line at a time, so very different number ratio.
So I got a few different things on the aspect, and hopefully we're not. Hopefully we're doing well. You're not running. Yeah, you don't look like you're too tired yet. By the way, I'm grateful, brother. I'm grateful. But I feel like in my head, recreation and cannabis is nothing more than fucking lobbyists for big pharma.
100%.
Take your attention off the medicine so we can keep giving you poison. You know what I mean? Go smoke, there's no value in medical cannabis. Go smoke that recreational weed. Keep taking our pills. I think that's how that's turning out to work, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I agree 100% with that, because when you look at it from an industry standpoint, if we were to actually invest true money into the study and unlocking the powers of cannabis, whether that's through, doing your RSO or concentrates or just flour or edibles, or if we develop technology to extract certain components of it that are extremely beneficial and can utilize that for medicinal purposes, they're set to lose billions upon billions. And what a smart pharmaceutical company would be doing behind the scenes is starting to look at this side of it. Not that I agree that pharmaceuticals should be involved in this at all, but, if you want to make those advances and make those medical breakthroughs, start looking at that, get ahead of the game, start to adapt. And I feel for a while, when it was just medical, specifically here in Massachusetts, we were really starting to adapt towards that, and then truly lost that over the last couple of years with recreational. I remember when recreational first happened, there was like 3 dispensaries open, and now I feel everywhere I go, there's another dispensary, almost like a Dunkin' Donuts where I'm from. I live in a town that's 3 square miles. I think we have 6 or 7 Dunkin' Donuts. It makes no sense. On top of a Honeydew, on top of 2 Mary Lou's coffees and a Starbucks. That's a lot of coffee joints for 3 square miles. And that's what I noticed with the recreational market, especially when you're having big corporations buy out companies, because it's getting tough for mom and pops to financially operate in this industry, due to different laws for partly, but also too, due to the crazy fees and the cost of shit. Being on the facility side of a cultivation center, it's extremely eye-opening and it's awesome because the way we operate is we're very mom and pop, our section of Massachusetts. We're a very tight knit family. We run a very mom and pop. But at the same time, we're also part of, a bigger family, who has outreach in multiple states. Um, in that regard. So, you know, when I got this job, I originally thought it was mom and pop due to the name. And then I found out once I was hired and working there for a little bit that we were part of a larger picture, and it's a company that buys it up because they have the means of it. And, I feel that's where we're kind of starting to get a saturation, in the market for the recreational side of it and drawing away from the medical side because a lot of places it's easier for them to get one license instead of two licenses, one for medical, one for recreational, less fees and everything. So I understand both sides of it. But then you have these big corporations coming in and able to buy all these licenses in small places, and just start putting up places everywhere. And it that's where I have a drawback with the market. It's like I wish there was more of a fight specifically here in Mass, but also in other states where it's legal to fight more for mom and pop from people that are from here and are here to work. Like I would love to hopefully have my own shop and be able to help, stimulate the economy, help provide back for my hometown or whatever city or town I may be able to operate out of, but have that mom and pop and no one else, just be able to do that side of it, and because that's where the love and care is. I have a few friends that are mom and pop cultivation centers. And, I'm not saying their product's better than ours or ours are better than theirs, but there's a difference, there's a little something extra special. It's not that anyone that I work with has less love for the plant or appreciation, because there's some of the most talented individuals I've ever worked with. But when you have that mom and pop feel, it's something a little bit different because you're not pushing out quantity, you're pushing out quality. You're trying to make that difference. It might be a small run. It might take you a little bit longer. You may not be able to compete on that big level like some of the big, names coming in, but you're making a difference, yeah, and that's where I want to go. And I hope that things start to swing that way. I don't know if they will. I don't feel they will, just the way because things are going. But there's also been talks here where they're trying to make it more affordable and more programs and lower costs. So individuals like myself could open up a place and compete with the big boys, and not have to worry. Because at the end of the day, I look at it this way. I don't know how it is where you are, but where I am, there's liquor stores on every corner. There's Dunkin' Donuts on every corner, and they all do well. So no matter what, there's always going to be the need and the business side of it. It's just when people have my stuff, I want them to know it's quality. I don't ever want it just to be produced for quantity. I want true. So, it'll be tough, when I bring my genetics, to the legal market, unless it's me doing it and running it myself, because I want a lot of love in it. I don't want people just to be like, this is good bud. Let's pump the shit out of it with nutrients, CO2, whatever else we got, the fanciest of lights, just to get the biggest quantity we can out of it. I'd rather sacrifice some of that quantity for them to produce a truly beautiful plant that does its purpose. So it'll be interesting for me. I'll probably hit some roadblocks with that. I may have to, stick my tail between my legs at times. It'll be interesting, but at the same time, I'm extremely excited for that journey and those next steps and to see what happens. And, hopefully when I do bring it forward, whether it's with myself or if someone else, brings it forward for me, hopefully it is that love and appreciation for it, because otherwise, and also too, I'll figure that out along the way. I read people pretty well, because otherwise, it wouldn't be worth it for me, because I'm not doing it for money. It's never been about that, and a lot of people that get to know me with this plant know it's never about that. My whole life, everyone, has hit me up like, hey, you got a little extra weed or anything, I need this, I'm not feeling well. And my entire life, I've always just given it to friends and family. When they call and ask, they're like, let me do a favor, let me throw you a couple bucks. And it's like, no, I want to help you. This is my way of saying, here you go. Hopefully this does what it needs to do for you, and it fixes things for a minute. Um, and that's the way I've always been. So that's why, like, money doesn't, I grew up poor, I'll die poor. I don't give a shit. It is what it is. So for me, it'll never be about the money. It'll always be, and don't get me wrong, if something, a little money came with it, I'm not going to complain, but I want it to be the quality, and it's like, that actually did help me. It helped me with X, Y, and Z, or just A, whatever it might be for that person, just to get that feedback, is awesome to hear, especially people that have tested this for me and been able to consume the flour and everything, and hearing the feedback like, hey, this worked for me. Like, I was having migraines and this worked for me the other day, your blueberry bubblegum strain. You know, Another person told me it was working for cramps they were having. So it's great to hear some of the different benefits that the things I've created have started helping people with. A lot of the feedback I get is, hey, it was smooth, it was tasty, it was a great high. This is what it felt like. And I do get some of the medical side of it. It's like, it helped me for this or that. And that's awesome to hear, So I'm excited to see even more, because once this crop's ready, I have a lot of samples giving out to individuals in the industry to get this feedback. Because also too, I don't want to embarrass myself. I really need to know, like, people aren't blowing smoke out my ass. Like, this is truly doing what I want it to do, and it is good, and it is something to bring forward. Because I would feel terrible. It's like, yeah, try this, and it's like, oh my God, what was this guy thinking? I don't want to be embarrassed by it, especially after the couple years of work I've put into developing these, and get ready to bring it to that next level of development.
That's pretty awesome. I'm excited for you, my friend, very much so. And I 100% agree with you. The mom and pop cannabis, or the boutique cannabis, if you will, the craft cannabis, if you will, has a lot more weight. I think it's, same thing. You are what you eat. If the plants are fed love, them plants are going to come out, what I mean? With something a little bit extra special there. When you're growing at more scale on that recreational, it is profit. It's pump it out. I don't even think that, I've talked to people that work, on scale, and half of them are probably more just view. It is it's not that cannabis dream that I dreamed of. It's just 9 to 5 job. You know what I mean? And with that, going with that attitude, it's, and again, I talk to people all the time that buy from the provisioning centers, and it's always the same thing. Looks good, smells good. Don't get me high. You know why I don't want to get you high? Because it ain't got that love. It don't have that, that vibe back and forth.
I agree fully with that. Especially recently, I was just a judge for the Cultivators Cup, and, it was 28 grams of flower. So 28 different strains. I can honestly say there was 3 that semi-impressed me. Everything else, it did nothing. It was absolutely horrible. And I remember testing some of it with my wife, and there was one strain, we smoked like 2 hits each, and we were like, this is fucking gross, and threw it out. And if you knew me, I would never throw out weed. I used to, when me and my friends couldn't find weed, we would be the guys looking for roaches in the couch, under the floor mats in your car. We would shake out the freaking car mat, see what shake we could get out of there. So, it's not like me to throw out weed at all. And these were all, big names here in Massachusetts. And it was embarrassing, let alone also too, some of them, the way they, not great hand trimming on some, but some threw in like popcorn buds, for a competition, so there were some other factors as well. But the smoke overall, it just wasn't good. Getting back to exactly what you were saying as well, where they're pumping out quantity, that little extra love factor, that's something special that's there. It's not there because, I look at it this way, because I've worked for mom and pops, I've worked in corporate America as well, you know, like working for the job that I'm at right now. Yes, working at a corporation, that's what I am against. But for me personally, it's great job experience, as my first legal cannabis job, here. And also, it's giving me a wealth of knowledge about the overall industry and how businesses are run. So I see the benefits of my job and what I can pull from that to better my future for when those next steps are there and I'm ready to take those. So I'm, not, they get to use me in a sense because I'm a great facilities manager and I know my shit when it comes to, our plumbing, HVAC, electrical, carpentry, construction, all that jazz. But for me, it's nice because I get to see everything and I'm learning a ton about indoor growing, which is something I've been working on for the last 5 years now is indoor growing because I'm 100% outdoors. That's what I would want to do if I had my own grow up here is purely either a greenhouse grow or a pure outdoor grow because that's what's lacking in this industry, especially out this neck of the woods where I am, is that, and I think that's also, that's a whole nother story, growing outdoors. I think there's a huge differential doing outdoors versus your indoor environment, because, partly in indoors, you control your environment the way you want it. So you pretty much make the plant the way you want it. Outdoors, yeah, there's some manipulation into it, but there's a lot of factors that play into it that are out of your control, so it's a fun challenge. And if you're doing it the right way, your weed's going to come out 1,000 times better. For all my indoor grows, they come out well, but I can honestly say if I were to give you some of my indoor bud versus my outdoor bud, 10 out of 10 times, I think you're going to choose my outdoor bud and be like, this is so much better than what you're doing inside. And, a big factor because of the elements, just because of Mother Nature, it's connecting back to where it came from. It's not being put in a place where it shouldn't be, in my grow tent, in my wood shop, in a bucket. It doesn't want to be there, so it's letting us know it doesn't want to be there. But getting back to it, being on that corporate side, there's a lot of takeaways from it, that I get access to that I may not have gotten access to, at, this level. So for me, I'm taking away a lot more than probably giving just as much, but it's very beneficial for me. Like I was saying, for when I get to those next steps, now I can utilize that. And it's like, wow, I got a lot more knowledge, especially due to my position as well. And then I get to see what everyone else is doing, so you get a good feel for all your competition and stuff. So hopefully as Beaver Buds grows and I learn a little bit more, I'm hoping those two roads meet and I'm just able to say, you know what, I'm taking that leap. It's time to do this and, go for that next step, whether it is a grow up, situation here in Mass or, mom and pop dispensary with the small batch cannabis out back, purely for medicinal purposes, I would look at recreational market, but for me, preference would be the medical market. That's where I want to be. I just don't want everyone coming on off the street. It is nice, so I go back and forth, but at the end of the day, my heart and gut are with the medical side. And that's really what I want. I'm glad people can get it recreationally. I think it's a lot better than going to the liquor store, getting a 6-pack or, a handful of nippers. I'd rather see people go get a couple joints and enjoy themselves.
Right. So touching on Beavah's Buds there, let's talk about that before we get too late and I lose the opportunity. So before I ask the questions about your strains and how you develop them,
Yep.
If you choose to keep that proprietary, I respect that. If you'd like to talk about that, I'm down to hear it. Why I say that before we get started is I wish cannabis would lean more in that direction. We see too many people finding a fire strain and try to recreate it, you know what I mean? And I think it's really watering down the cannabis strains or what reaches people 100%. So I've kind of, so many years into this, have kind of developed the attitude with it is I wouldn't mind if breeders kept the ingredients proprietary just to slow down the copycat bullshit. You know what I mean?
I agree 100% with that. Especially so it is nice. Like, for example, I have a friend here in Mass who breeder as well. Used to do it very low key, worked years and years on it, shared it with select few, through behind the scenes. And then, after quite a few years, started allowing, companies here in Mass to buy it. So right now there's 4 cultivators here in Mass that now grow his genetics. And with that, it helped grow him and give him more exposure. So now he has his own cultivation center that he's building. So it's been a good trickle effect, and he's going to be a mom and pop situation, which is awesome. But for him, talking with him, some of his experience, through that was, good and bad. 3 out of the 4 companies kept the name, did the full lineage, gave him credit, and he still gets that, on top of the deal that he has worked out with them. But one of the companies straight up just changed the name of it, kept the genetic line the same, but changed the name and claim it's one of theirs now, like, oh, we grew this is what we're doing and stuff like that. And there really wasn't any recourse for it, at all. So he kind of had to bite that one. It was like, well, I guess this happens, and getting to the proprietary aspect of it, I agree. I think things that we create, I would like to put a patent on it. I would love to say, yeah, I got a 20-year patent on this strain. So these genetics are mine. Yes, you can buy them, but you can't do anything with them, and I'm hoping we're moving in the way that we can do that, and we can break it down to the specific DNA of each strain. And then you get your certificate or whatever it may be. And it's like, yes, here's your proprietary rights. You own this strain, here's the DNA. And if you ever question anything, you could have that tested. It's like, no, that's my genetics. Like, that's my DNA strain. Like, that's an exact mirror. Like, you can't do that. So I would love to see that for a while, not saying I don't want to share my seeds with everyone. I do, I do want to share it with everyone. But at the same time, I don't want anyone to ever take credit for it and be like, this is mine. So for a long time, for, almost 2 years, I didn't share what my exact strains were, like the makeup, even with people that were testing and growing for me. I just gave them bogus stuff. I was like, just grow it. I was like, don't worry about what it's crossed with. Just let me know how it turns out. So it's taken me a while to break that shell and start to release what each one is. And then when I started to do that, I didn't release the mail for a while. I just did a little, made up abbreviation for it. Because I was nervous that people, were going to take it. And then I started creating the names for them, unique names for them. And then I've been starting to release the full thing. And the reason is because I'm getting ready to go to that next step. People are going to want to know what the lineage is. And I kind of accept that there is a possibility that once this does go into the legal market, that someone could change the name. Someone could try to take credit for it. I've accepted that just because it's happened so often in the cannabis community, whether people realize it or not. It happens a lot more than meets the eye. So just like anything, you make 1,000 or something, 10% of it are going to be bad, so I accept that there'll probably be some knucklehead that's like, oh, this is a strain I created. It's like, oh, really, fucker? I created that like 20 years ago in my backyard. Like,
That's
you know,
that's why I think with the, yeah, and again, I appreciate the fact that you want to put it out there. You respect the fact that people might want to know, but in the same aspect, somebody takes your seeds, and you know what I mean. They claim it. Oh, and this is clone only. Oh yeah, well I know that's my. What is it? Recreate it. What is it? You know what I mean? Well, tell me. What is it? You know what I mean? You can't do it. So I can
exactly.
appreciate, even at that, Coca-Cola, how many years they've been in business? You know what I mean? They've had the right to keep that formula
Yep.
proprietary, and people are still buying it. People are trying to recreate it, whatever, but Coke still has those
Oh yeah.
ingredients. And
And you can
then
say that.
there's nothing wrong with that. And I think cannabis should stay like that. You know what I mean? There's nothing wrong with you being able to hold back, you know, and that eliminates a lot of other bullshit too. People trying to buy or breed really just because hype. You know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah.
And people do. They buy it. They're not even shopping with their nose anymore. They're just, oh, it's got cookies in it. You know what I mean? It's
Exactly.
it should stand on its own merit, not what's in it. I guess
Yeah.
is where
No.
I'm getting.
Oh no, I couldn't agree more. And also too, you got to wonder sometimes, like when you have these genetic companies, especially like if the reputable ones, but then there's other ones that are questionable, and you have to wonder, and it does happen. Just taking any old seeds, and it's like, oh, the most fire strain is sour blackberry right now. So I have no idea what this is, but it's sour. We're going to call it sour blackberry. We're going to put a higher price point on it. Now someone's buying it who has no idea, thinking like, oh, this is going to be some crazy thing, looks up that strain, and then it's nothing what it is. And that's another issue, running into, I factor in, like I could run into is someone could try to sell my genetics. And it's like, yeah, those aren't my seeds. I didn't create that strain. I don't know who this person is. And I see that on Instagram consistently, people putting up warnings saying, hey, watch out for this breeder. They're trying to sell these genetics. They're not affiliated, never have been, definitely not authentic genetics from this, actual breeder.
Right on. So I do, man. And so if you choose not to talk about it, I can respect. But
Oh, yeah,
I
no,
guess
definitely.
I
Oh,
would.
so
I do want to know though. I mean, so how did you go about reading your lines? Did source from clones, known good genetics, or did you kind of source,
so
hunt your
you
own
know
greatness?
so I'm very different than most, and I think a lot of breeders in this way could respect it, but at the same time are like, wow, you're either one lucky son of a bitch or just crazy. um so what I did was, over the years I've been just collecting different unique genetics and trying to go back to original strains and a lot of land races. Excuse me for 1 second. So I'm a big believer, and I created some hybrids myself just with the strains that I made it. But I'm trying to bring back some original funk, some true land race, some true old school. And I think as we've been breeding, exactly what you're saying, like the watered down effect. I think that, the more strains we're creating, next thing you know, when you trace the lineage of some strains, it's like at like 45 ancestors. And it's like, why is your lineage so long? So, I think that's where some of the watering down comes from. So for me, like trying to go back to some of the original, legendary strains and finding land races, that's more meaningful for me, and trying to bring back some of that old school funk, with a little bit of the new age stuff. Um, so long story short, so what I was doing was, so I'd reached out to Todd McCormick, who had the original skunk number one pre 98 genetics in his vault, and he was doing a limited release. So I reached out to him, contacted him, was able to get 20 seeds of it. So had that shipped out. So I was growing that for one grow, and I was like, oh, this is awesome. And the females that I used, I had grown in another grow, and I still had genetics, two different grows, and, I enjoyed those. So then, about almost 3 years ago now, I was growing the 7 females that I used and the original skunk genetics. So what I did was, out of everything that was growing, because everything was regular seeds, and so it's a 50-50. So I ended up having one male skunk out of the batch of skunk that I was doing. And the other strains I was growing, knock on wood, lucky enough, turned out to be female. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, man, this male is beautiful. I was like, he's a stud. Great, between the nodes, the spacing, the structure, the leaves, a little bit of the stem rub, the smell coming off of it. Overall, I liked it. And my gut was like, Mark, you know what? You've always wanted to breed. There's something there. Take that and put that off to the side. So then I'm like, all right, what do I breed with? I was like, do I take, some of the ones outdoors in the 5 gallons, bring them inside, do a breeding project? Do I fire up a new grow and I just keep him more so try in a veg state for a little bit? So I was like, fuck it. So I took, the different strains I had outside and I brought them inside, the extra ones. And I just I threw them all in together and I let them party. And that's how I developed it. And then after that, the following year, over that course of that year, that's when I started to do my pheno hunting. So I narrowed down each one to a handful of good females and good males. And I just let them have at it in a tent, on little separate grows. And that's when I started to send my genetics out to select people that I had been networking with through events and Instagram as well, to start to see what other people thought. And that's really where it came. And then pretty much brings me to today, where I'm doing it for the first time on an outdoor run. Because everything else I've just been focused on the indoor aspect of it and getting, people to give me feedback on their indoor grows and stuff. So I'm excited. So I've definitely identified, with the 7 strains, some strains grow better outdoors than indoors. Some are definitely going to be an indoor one, but could go outdoors if you really want to. And, I have 1 or 2 that could probably go indoors or outdoors, equally as well, which I'm very excited about. So for my females, and this was purely based on strains I've grown that I thoroughly enjoyed, is I used OJ for 1, blue cheese, original Kush. Then there's Wits End. Then I have blueberry bubblegum and peyote critical. Yes, we're all of them. And out of those, the blueberry bubblegum, which I was lucky enough, I got these I hadn't seen this strain in over 20 years. And I was lucky enough, I got these genetics from a friend over in the Netherlands. That's a breeder over there. And I sent him some of my genetics. So he was one of the first to grow out my strains officially, which was awesome and got great feedback for him. But he had hunted down originally, the blueberry bubblegum. And when he had got those, he was telling me about them. I was like, I'd never seen those in like the last 20 years. So I was fortunate enough, he sent me out, quite a few of those. And that's how I was able to acquire those genetics, which was awesome because that brought me back to my teenage years when I was first smoking. It was one of the first strains I smoked that had a name, which was awesome. And I remember it blew me out of the water. It tasted like bubble gum. And so far this has done the same thing. And the nose on it outside right now for the first run ever is you're getting on the front end that old school bubble-licious gum taste and smell, and then with hints of funk and skunk on the back end. So I'm very, very excited for that. And then also the blue cheese that I did. A surprising turn with that one is on the terpenes. Pure lemonese and citrus are pouring out of it, like sweet candy. Very, very happy surprise with that one. Was not expecting that on the nose at all. I was expecting with the blue cheese and the original skunk to really have some earthy, funk, pungent smell to it. So I'm beyond impressed. It's picking up terps from the blue dream that was used to make the blue cheese. So I'm very, very excited with that one. And then the OJ one, I can't describe the smell, but you just want to eat it. Like it's super sweet and you just want to eat it. Like you get your nose in there and you're like, I just want to take a bite out of you right now. Like it's just, so those three I'm very, very impressed with. The other ones I like, don't get me wrong. I really like those ones as well. They're coming out awesome. They got great noses on them. But these were the three that were my gut instincts. And these are the three that I know will be the ones going to the bringing me to the next level. And I can't wait for that stage of development. It would be nice to see these on a larger scale and be able to hit, the medical masses. I have to accept, it'll probably go hit recreational market as well. I have to accept that. I think for me to keep growing and going where I want to go, there's some things that I will have to sacrifice on, and I hate to admit that, but it's gonna happen. It may be a little give for more what I want to do, and if going into the recreational market means it gives me a better means to focus more on medical things and bring things to people medically wise, whether that would be, going to more events and, hooking medical patients up that have cards and everything, or, trying to do something where it's like, hey, if you're in need, I actually have a program where you can have free medicine, on the medical side. So, it'll be interesting where this journey brings me, and if I have to make a sacrifice here or there for the betterment of where I want to go and be and the impact I want to make, it sucks to say, but I got to do what I got to do.
I don't think anybody would blame you there. You got to put food on the table. But I think people in the know, since you're trying to put it out there as a medicine, excuse me, first and foremost, I think that's what it would be remembered as. And again, as far as like we're talking about in the medical, recreational markets, boom, boom, and one kind of leading the other one further away from what it really is. I think once it gets down to a recreational market on a mass, scale there, it will be limited. I mean, like we were talking about earlier, how can you can honestly look at cookies on a recreational side and go, yeah, it's a medicine that will save your life. Da, 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 you know what I mean? And then if that's what it is, and it's weeded down to just the, because they won't do the pheno hunts. There won't be, 3,000 strains they're putting out. You know what I mean? It will be just like cigarettes. It'll be 16, it'll be 12. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, no, I agree 100%. Especially, like we're a facility, we just do mums with clones. Um, and I can honestly say there's not much of a hunt behind the scenes. It's more like here's two clones, turn them into mums and then use those. Um, we do grow some fire at our facility, but there's also a lot of stuff where it's like, yeah, that's just for the masses, just to produce it. And then when you see everything we put into it, when you're getting buds that weigh 50 grams, yeah, that's cool. But should your bud really weigh 50 grams at the same time, for one bud? And you can tell that's just pure nutrients and CO2 being pumped into it. That's it. They're left alone, other than, a few hours during the day when there's a little maintenance and care on them. And, it sucks going that way, you know, and hopefully, there'll be more like-minded individuals, and especially if they change some of the legislation here in Mass, that can start doing those smaller scale and starting to saturate the market in that way with the mom and pop shops. Even if they are recreational mom and pop shops, ideally, hopefully it'd be, some more medical as well. But I feel at the same time, the way we're progressing with this industry, especially here, we're going to soon be like Seattle, where they had a lot of medical shops. And then as soon as they went rec, everyone who had medical licenses dropped those, got their rec licenses, and went rec instead. So you virtually lost the medical market. And I think that, that's a very big reality, unfortunately, especially what's going on here in Massachusetts, and how the rest of New England is. Because it's always hearing about recreational markets opening, but very few medical. For us, we are recreational and medical, so we do have both sides of it, through our dispensaries, and we also provide to medical and recreational facilities on the wholesale side. So there is some good that goes into it, but the medicine that's going for medical is the same going for recreational. Unfortunately, especially with the dosing for the edibles and stuff, and the dosing for the topicals. So even though we're providing medical side of it, it's not getting that full medical effect because of limitations the way it is with the laws, based on our licensing. Where if you're more of a pure medical facility, you can actually produce those higher doses for the medical side. And for us, our production is pretty much recreational. I'd say is 80% of our sales. And hopefully, like myself, and if others can do that as well, we can start steering it in the other direction. And I think a big part is education. Is people just actually taking the time to learn. And I think to a degree there is that going on even in recreational, when I have gone into a few and seen it, especially with some of our older generations, I have seen, bud tenders explain to them the benefits, and take that time. So almost like a medical appointment, in essence. But for them, it's like, oh, I can just go down the street and go to the regular store, and it makes me wonder, do a lot of them know, like, there's actually medical facilities you can go to and get better products, but for lower costs and not pay taxes, so it's a win-win. And the individuals there are more versed on the medical benefits of the plant, whereas a bud tender and a recreational is going to be versed on the smell, the effects, and, is it the new flavor of the week? So they're just going to be trying to push it out where it's like, okay, what do you have? All right, you have Crohn's, you have cramps, you have cancer, whatever your issue may be on the medical side, you get that extra something where it's like, oh, all right, here are strains that have actually, based on feedback, that are showing to help with these symptoms that you suffer from. So we would recommend using these. So I think that's, where a lot gets lost and where a lot of education could happen. Because the rec side, they just want to pump you out, and I'm sure that's where you are as well, the rec side. They just want the numbers to come in. They don't want to take the time to explain to you what the bud is, all the time. Now and then you get a good person. But generally, I couldn't tell you how many bud tenders. It's like, yeah, we have sativas. Here's the names of them. Yeah, we have indigos. Here's the names of them. Okay, well, do you have any that taste like this or these effects? I guess if you read the menu, and it's like, all right, I appreciate that. It's awesome feedback. Thank you so much. It's funny that I've corrected, a handful of them over the years as well. Just like, you're completely wrong in that information. And I don't mean to be that guy, but let me just explain to you why you're wrong. And here's some actual advice on it, to help you better understand this. So I think that's where there's a big disconnect as well, is because you're not getting that upfront training on the recreational side, but you get it on the medical side. And when you're just throwing all recreational in your face, no one knows about medical. It becomes obsolete.
Yeah, when it gets to like the numbers and stuff like that, I've kind of said myself, I would really like to see, because some of it is the bud tender um, not being able to properly describe what their cannabis will do for them, but a lot of it too is just numbers being put in front of them. A lot of like Bosch markets, if you will, are
Yep.
becoming, pretty much like scan, ooh, scan, and then you just pick up your order. Here in Michigan, it's even worse. I mean, you're handed like a restaurant menu, or online you can do, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Drive up, pick your order up. Or like I said, you just look at a menu. Oh, that looks nice. Yeah, give me some of that. And it's not the spirit plant medicine that it's set up to be. So to kind of eliminate that or help people guide them through that, I like you said, um, they need education is key. So I believe if you go stray outside of your normal area, or a new dispensary pops up, I believe that you should have to either take like a 10-minute watch a video on terpenes, how they affect
Yep.
you, THC numbers, go through the whole gauntlet, or what, or just have to sign a waiver. No, I ain't gonna take 10 to watch a video. I don't give a fuck. It's recreational. Recreational. You know what I mean? But I think that would be a good start in, helping people understand the numbers, since a lot of times we can't use our noses anymore.
And also too, I think the numbers will probably be partly down as well in the medical senses. The amount of people that are learning to grow and doing more home grows, especially in this day and age with other factors going on, around us, trying to have those cost savings. And also, getting back to having that sense of accomplishment and getting that full picture of doing your own home grow. I think there's probably been a lot of medical patients as well. Like for me, because my grows get bigger and bigger and I do it more often and more often and more often, I use dispensaries less and less. I more so use those in between harvests when I've run out of my homegrown. So for me, medical wise, even though I renew my card every year, I only go to the dispensary a handful of times because I always have homegrown medicine, you know. So I think that's probably been a factor as well. So yeah, it would be interesting to see the numbers, like how many people still utilize medical facilities, how many people aren't utilizing medical just because it went recreational, how many people are doing home grows, therefore not utilizing or very limited use of medical facilities. I'd be curious as well to see what those numbers are like, because you never know. There may be more on the medical side that meets the eye, but because of doing your own grow or going to recreational markets because it's more convenient and closer to you, we're not seeing that side of it.
The disheartening thing is, I seen you kind of point out earlier too, was the switch from the medical market to the recreational. I think legislation has kind of tipped it that way. I mean, uh, plant count, uh, just regulations and testing, you know what I mean, aren't as stringent versus the recreation or medical side.
Yep.
You call it medical medicine, and what can be allowed on the shelves way more stringent than what can
Oh,
be produced.
100%. Oh yeah, no, definitely. There's definitely different testing regulations on both sides of the market, in that regards. So yeah, so you could, on the recreational side, because of those, you can be exposed to a lot more than meets the eye. Like if you have, like in Massachusetts, let's say for example, your flower gets tested and has mold on it, you're allowed to remediate that. And if you remediate it, you get to test it again. And if it passes, you get to use that as a consumable. Um, which is, when you think about it, it's like that's pretty fucking gross. You know, or you freeze it and then you blast it in the lab. And yeah, I understand you're removing all the impure and the negative qualities, and you're just really extracting the good stuff in the medicinal parts of the plant. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, that was all moldy bud. I don't want to consume that. Very similar, like I was saying earlier. I lost a plant to PM. There was a few parts that I was able to save of it, but for the most part, it was like, yeah, I'm not even going to take the risk. Especially with my health, it's like it's just not worth it. And that's the difference right there. On the other side of it, for the quantity, it would have been like, all right, do whatever you can to fix this. We need to push this out. We'll remediate it if we have to. But on the caring side, the quality side, it's like, yeah, it sucks to lose that. That's a good chunk of medicine. But at the same time, that definitely would not have been good. That should not be consumed. So, you know what? It is what it is. It's a minor loss in the grand scheme of things.
So, do you want to talk a little bit growth style and technique a little bit?
So overall, for my outdoor grows, I'm very basic. I do my living soil. I have a 2-part mix that I do. And then I take some of my aged compost. I just get a big old tarp. I mix it together. And then I just use that per plant. Um, you know, and then what I do afterwards around the plants are I use a lot of bumper crops. So over the years, I've realized different crops that are either to deter pests, attract certain pests that are good for the plant, bring in other nutrients into the plant naturally. As an example, like string beans and snow peas are natural nitrogen pullers. So they pull nitrogen, put it through their system into the root system, and that goes into the soil. Then the cannabis roots can pick up extra nitrogen and bring that into the plant. As an example, lemon balm, another great thing. That's been a great pest deterrent. Borage is great to put around your plants because that attracts thrips. So they're going to attack the borage before they go after your pot plant. They'll devastate the borage, but it's perfect because then they're not going after your plant, and causing issues. So I've figured out over the years different things like that to include, lavender's another good thing. There's a lot of other herbs, and other flowers that you can grow in unison, which all complements each other. And, it's similar, like, I have a fish tank that I haven't changed the water in 8 years. It's a perfect living ecosystem. Yeah, I top it off when it gets a little low, but there's shrimp in there. There's snails. There's different fish at different levels, your bottom dwellers, your mids, your uppers, and it's all live plants. And it's a well-balanced ecosystem. So for 8 years, I've never had to do a water change. And pretty much it's the same fish for the last 8 years. Fish shouldn't last that long from the pet store. They're only made to last 1 or 2 years. So you go back to the pet store. But anyway, so I've come to realize with my outdoor grows, and as I've gotten better, is doing that. So it's a full spectrum. So everything's complementing each other. And, which is just awesome. So that's my style. That's really basically it. Otherwise, I'll do some low stress training, depending on the strain and stuff, some tie downs, and I'll do topping. Otherwise, a lot of it, I've just let it go natural. I look at, when humans first discovered marijuana and then started growing it regularly, it was just growing wild on mountainsides and random places in nature. They knew no idea about manicuring it or defoling. You could only imagine, what their bud must have looked like, hundreds and thousands of years ago. So I let it go wild. And yes, I do the default, because I don't want to get PM issues or bud rot, and I know during flowering how it benefits the plants and my buds get bigger and fuller and appreciated. And also when it comes to harvest, it makes life a lot easier. So it's not as, tedious clipping all those leaves, getting ready to hang dry for a while. But yeah, that's my style. It's very basic. There's not a lot of madness behind what I do.
Yeah, I could appreciate that 100%. I guess the next question I would have is, do you think there's a question between, or a difference rather, between indoor and outdoor breeding? Of course, everybody has their thoughts on why outdoors better, indoors better, but is there a difference in your opinion in the breeding, what you get into?
Interesting. So I've never bred outdoors at all. So I've only bred indoors, just to have it in a more controlled environment. Because every time I have bred has always been when I've been doing an outdoor grow. So I've always wanted to keep them separate. I'd be curious on an outdoor one. I guess it's more natural. So in that sense, you just let the wind do its thing instead, like in the tent. Yeah, I have the fan and stuff, but I would give it a good shake or a flick to let that pollen just get into the air and blow all over. So, I'm more saturating the entire plant that in that sense. So because I've never done it, I don't have a true answer, but yeah, I'd be curious to see what that would be like outdoors. Yeah, I've never really thought about breeding outdoors. I just always, for me, having it in a controlled environment and in a separate space, that just felt more natural. Just being like, all right, let this do its thing while I can have other grows over here and doing that and stuff.
I can understand that. Yeah, when it comes to breeding like that, man, I'm pretty passionate about the subject, even though I'm not doing any breeding. But I really think in the long run, keeping things proprietary, breeding both ways, indoor, outdoor, it's very key. I'd like to see just more outdoor breeding because I think, again, we're talking about a living, breathing, plant, which I believe is very much as conscious as we are, despite what science says. Um, as our DNA, we have a DNA toolbox, I believe the cannabis does. So as we're bred to our environment, you know what I mean? I think indoor breeding is kind of limiting the toolbox, you know what I mean? Because the factors, like you pointed out, are so perfect, if you will. So they're not
Yep.
necessarily, getting the toolbox to defend themselves from pathogens, stuff like that are naturally could be in the toolbox from the same plant that's been outdoors and had seen every stress possible. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no,
Oh yeah, I didn't mean to cut you off. You're the guest.
yeah, no, I actually I fully agree with that because running these outdoors, like I was saying earlier, I've now seen which strains can be pure outdoors versus which ones can be indoors. So, by doing the breeding outdoors, the more I think about that, I do see a lot of benefit in that because now you are going up against the elements, those hot, humid days, those cold days, rainy days for, a week stretch. Um, so you're more adapt to that naturally, and build barriers towards that and figure out, what to do so you can keep sustaining life. So yeah, I guess, I have a challenge, next season, because it's way too late now, to try that right now outdoors around here. But, next year, I have enough room where I could pull it off a little area and do an outdoor breeding project. I think that'd be a good challenge for me. That'd be interesting as well.
Yeah, that's just again, it's kind of my thoughts on breeding anyway, a little bit.
Yeah, because the one that had it, my OJ, the second one I have outdoors, that one's doing phenomenal. But that was the one that was susceptible to the PM. And originally it started off as a little area, and I was treating it, and then we had a couple days of rain, so I really couldn't get out there to treat it at all because it was off and on rain for a few days. And I got out there once that was over, and top to bottom, it just ballooned up, just went everywhere. And then luckily, the second one didn't do that, for whatever reason. But looking at all the other strains, that I created that are outdoors, didn't have that issue with any of them, which was good. So I was like, oh, all right, you guys have been, if you were going to get it, knock on wood, you'd be getting it right now, so I'm very fortunate, yeah, so that does tie back to the outdoor breeding, let it go natural in that sense. So it does build an immunity to that. And then once it's outdoor established, indoor is fine. If you ever wanted to run those indoors, you wouldn't have an issue. But there's a lot more value in outdoor runs, and I get jealous, like a lot of my friends, that I get advice from, far as growers, are all on the West Coast. And it's like, you guys get such a better, longer growing season than we do. I'm so jealous of you guys. We have a very, very short window here in New England, for outdoor growing. So I'm lucky that we can fit it in the little stretch that we have here.
I think the talent's on both sides, to be honest with you. I think it takes everything, up for everybody. As you kind of talked about earlier, we should be constantly be learning. Stumbles and falls with our environment, our genetics, our soil. There's always could be something. We should always be taking things in. And as we, travel, move, I don't think anybody can call themselves necessarily a master grower. Or I've got this dick because you can move to the West Coast. You know what I mean? In all new
Yep.
climate and everything else. And guess what? You're not so much master anymore because now you're back to the learning side of the shit. So I think that's, super key. But I think, but I guess what I'm saying is you can give all the props you want to the West Coast growers that have all the optimal conditions. But I got a lot of props for the guys on the East Coast that are fucking making what they have work. You know what I mean? And still killing it. There's a lot of talent to that. That's, I guess, what I'm saying.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And you are right. I don't believe there is such thing as a master grower, or anyone that can identify themselves as a master grower. And it's just because when you look at all the different grows from around the world, very different climates from each other, very different seasons, very different soils. So it is, unless you've gone and grown all around the world in all those different conditions, no matter how good you are, how many strains you create, how big you get, I truly believe there's never be a master grower. And I don't know of one to date. I don't know of anyone that's hit all aspects of the world and been like, I've grown in India, I've grown in Pakistan, I've grown in Africa, I've grown in the US, I've grown in the islands. I've never heard of that before. So yeah, I think for individuals like myself, no matter how good we get, it is true. It's just a consistent learning game, no matter what. There's always new stuff to learn. There's always new things to try. So I don't, and that's probably a big thing that excites me about it, is that it will never stop growing. There'll never be a day where I'm like, I've learned everything I could learn about growing pot. There's nothing else I can learn. There'll never be a day.
That's a great attitude to have. That's for sure.
But I think on that note, I'm not gonna lie. It's 1:40 in the morning here.
I was just gonna say something. Yeah.
I gotta be to work around 7 tomorrow. So this has been a pleasure and a blast. I could do this for the next couple of hours. but I definitely need to get some sleep and get ready to tackle whatever bullshit's thrown at me tomorrow.
Oh, I completely understand. I was getting ready to ask, man. I'm just to the point where I was beginning to feel guilty. So thank you for
Do not
that.
feel guilty at all. I did it to myself.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much for your time. Couple of things before you go. I don't know if you've watched a few of these episodes or not, but this is the way the show works. The Zoom link that I sent you tonight is always good for what I call the Weed Nerd World. And that is only
Okay.
open to the past guests. So Monday nights is a guaranteed Weed Nerd World. If you want to come and hang out, you can bank on that for sure. The
All
other
right.
ways you can find the Weed Nerd World is a no guest night, or if I told you pre-show time slot was from 11:30 to 4:20, trying to get things back on schedule. So on normal nights, I end things with you and pick up with a Weed Nerd World. So anytime you see Weed Nerd World, your link works. You can come hang out, chill,
All right. Very
smoke,
cool.
tell us whatever you're up to. We're always looking for new conversation. So please keep that in mind. Keep it safe. If you lose it, hit me up. I'll give you it again.
Okay. Awesome. I appreciate that.
So with the other thing I'd like to get from you is the little thing I call the soundbite. At some point, it will be a commercial for your episode. Basically, what I'm looking for, my version of would be, hey, this is Eagle, and I'm on fucking Talking Shit with Eagle, episode 714. You can put whatever you want before or after, as long as it's got that in the body. I'd be more than grateful, and I am ready. There we go.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? I'm on with Talking Shit with Eagle. It was a great experience, a great time. Definitely need to check him out. I'm on episode 714. And if you want to follow me and my grows, come check me out on Beaver Budz on Instagram and Beaver Budz Backup. Thank you for tuning in.
One last thing before we go, and I should have made this ask this way earlier. If they're interested in finding some of them genetics or they're in mass, how can they get a hold of you for some what you're working on?
Straight up on Instagram right now. If they want to DM me, no problem at all. And can definitely help them out.
Right. I had to make sure and get that out there.
Not a problem, brother. I appreciate it.
With that being said, this is the episode of 714. If you guys want to hang out for a few, I guess I got a few. I'll see you guys here in the Weed Nerd World in a minute. If not, thank you guys for enjoying this episode. Hopefully you've enjoyed it as much as I have. If not, you're not transferring over, then one last thank you for your time. Don't forget to do something nice for somebody. Random acts of kindness do save lives. Thank you one last time, Mark. We are.
Thank you very much.
Friend.
Peace, brother. Enjoy the rest of the show.